A loud crash awakens you from the bliss of deep slumber, your eyes snapping open to find the door having been thrown gaping wide. A faint blue glow emits from the hallway beyond. The peculiar light almost seems to call to you with a strange pulsing that is so familiar. Compelled by more than simple curiosity, you rise and step into the hallway to find the azure aura originating from a mysterious light ahead. Slowly stepping towards the blinding source, you feel an odd scratching at the back of your mind as you place one foot before the other. You near the brilliant radiance, everything becoming drenched in the ethereal sapphire hue cast off by the thing waiting just out of reach. As the light grows unbearably bright, whispers tug at the edge of your hearing, and without thinking you start to reach out your hand. Just before you grip the source of the blue gleam, however, something warm radiates in your chest, and you hesitate. The whispers hiss in disapproval at your pause, and that is enough to alarm you about the all-too-familiar feeling of something foreign in your head. You jerk back from the light, and the whispers turn into a painful shriek just as the light is snuffed out, and total darkness consumes you. Suddenly, you find yourself standing in a strange room that you've never encountered before. It looks to be some kind of grand hall, the impressive architecture and staggering wealth on display enough to shame even the wealthiest of kings into silence. Before you is an immense wall covered with beautiful paintings, displaying art that must have been collected from all over the world, from cultures both known and unknown. Yet these are mere accents to the towering doors at its center. Opulent Dracwald oak carefully crafted into stunning designs, detailing fantastical creatures and legendary heroes from many histories. Upon the gateway is carved a great number of peculiar runes, each sigil radiating various colors of light and crackling with arcane power. What draws your eye, however, is the considerable bloodstain upon the master-crafted portal, as if someone horribly wounded had slammed into it, perhaps struggling to open one of the doors in their weakened state. Following the dried crimson down to where it must have dripped upon the marble floor, you discover a trail that leads all the way to your feet before continuing onwards. Spinning around, you manage to glimpse a great many doors leading out to various hallways, before you notice the distinct glimmer of light on metal. Your heart begins to pound as you recognize the ominous sword that rests upon the ground before you, still dripping with ruby liquid that pools all around it, and seems to be the origin of the smear leading to the grandiose doors. The temperature rapidly drops, your breath becoming visible, as an involuntary shiver passes down your spine, the blood upon the ground audibly cracking as it ices over. You feel a tug upon your soul, some deep yearning to reach out and pluck the blade from the floor, to feel that comforting weight in your hand once more, just for a quick moment. Indulge in the power that would course through your eager veins again. Without realizing it, you have moved closer to the foreboding steel, watching your reflection stare back up at you with red, glowing eyes from its prison of metal. As you start to kneel closer to the ancient blade, that warm sensation in your chest returns, and the alluring trance shatters once more as you recoil away from the weapon. You remember this abomination, how it used you, abused you, manipulated you like a puppet to achieve its own ends, without care for your well-being or suffering. Steeling your resolve, you back away from the sword, determined to seek out some way to destroy or contain this foul aberration. Just as you turn away, however, you hear the distinct noise of frozen fragments spilling onto the floor. Trusting in your gut, you throw yourself to the floor just as the blade comes slashing where your back had been moments before. You begin to frantically roll away, the ancient sword impaling through the marble with frightening ease as it attempts to end your life. Your heart leaps into your throat as you stumble away from the scything steel, narrowly avoiding each stab and slice from the animated weapon. However, the cursed sword strikes with all the skill of a master swordsman, without any of the limitations of flesh. And when you back into the runic doors, it finally spears at your chest, with there being no time to dodge. In desperation, you throw out your hand to shield yourself, and the curious warm sensation in your chest flares hot. Your fingers emit a blinding white light, striking the blade, which proceeds to halt in the air, close enough that it just barely cuts your skin. It shivers violently for a moment, before launching backwards and colliding with one of the low-hanging chandeliers, shattering into pieces on impact. The light fades from your fingers, and your chest cools down, exhaustion suddenly overtaking you. As you lean against the mysterious gateway, and your vision begins to fade, the last thing you see is the Loremaster, standing in the center of the room, observing you with an expression of satisfaction. Easy does it, my dear student. You should not make any sudden movements. All is well. You have proven yourself as quite the exemplary lore seeker this day. To resist the siren song of an unholy blade, which had already dominated your mind once, and then go on to destroy it. Quite impressive. Not to mention the discovery that you have some hidden talent for the magical arts. I must admit, even I was surprised by such a development. The sorcery you unleashed was quite impressive, though it obviously has taken quite the toll on your body. Worry not. I have prepared a delightful chicken soup with fresh moot bread mixed with ground up ixie grubs from Lustria. You will be feeling refreshed by morning. However, I can tell you have many questions, so let us start with the most pressing. As I am sure you're keenly aware, that sword was no mere weapon. That was an unholy blade, one of the most powerful I have seen in my long life, in fact. You see, when the mightiest warriors die, with sacred vows unfulfilled, or a powerful curse upon them, they sometimes return to the world of the living as undead horrors. Most of these individuals emerge into unlife as the strongest of White Kings, great skeletal champions, able to animate themselves without the aid of necromancy. Occasionally, the spirit of the warrior will instead pass directly into the weapon they use to spill blood in life. These dark blades contain the murderous will of their wielder, and become consumed by desires of violence. Most of these devilish entities will wait patiently for someone to pick them up, whereupon it shall attempt to dominate the mind of the holder, and drive them to enact its terrible will. Very few humans have the will to resist such a process. Even those among the dwarves and elves would find it a difficult trial. Of course, as you saw, unholy blades can animate themselves to attack those nearby should they become desperate. Only by shattering the sword can its relentless pursuit of bloodshed be brought to an end, which is often quite difficult due to being impressively forged metal blades reinforced by dark magic. To make matters worse, they are quite deadly, as each weapon possesses the same qualities as a white blade, able to tear out a foe's life force on contact, making even the shallowest cut capable of slaying a man instantly. I hope you can appreciate the impressive feat you managed to accomplish by destroying the one you found in the Hall of Convergence. That space you were in connects every room in my home, and that cursed sword had become quite the nuisance by preventing my access. Oh yes, I knew it had been locked in there since your arrival. Who do you think put it there? And what do you think the exam I mentioned yesterday was? I needed to see if you had the strength of will needed to resist the allure of its call when it sighted you again. If you managed to escape the room without wielding it, you would have passed. But then you proceeded to destroy it, surpassing my expectations by quite the margin. Speaking of that unholy blade, I have spent much of the last 2 weeks researching it in hopes of divining its origin. There is both terrible and good news in my discovery. To start with the unfortunate side of things, you were used as a pawn by one of my enemies in an attempted assassination plot. That blade did not form like most such horrors, but instead was carefully crafted by an incredibly skilled Necroc vampire lord. He must have poured a considerable amount of malice and dar into the blade, to infuse it with such malice towards me that it would travel all the way here just to cut me down. I had heard rumors that some among the Necrocs had designed entire regiments of animated soldiers, empty suits of armor, wielding wicked blades, and taking to the fields of battle to form tough, elite troops. But to make one such weapon with such drive for a singular purpose is quite impressive. In any event, as I was saying, you were merely a small piece in this game. But I am afraid the cost may have been higher than you realize. When the unholy blade first dominated your mind, it did not begin its journey immediately, as according to the records I could find, you first took up the blade in the market of your hometown from a traveling merchant who claimed to be offering you a remarkably cheap blade of impressive quality. I suspect that you were not even the first to wield this sword, but one of many. Unfortunately, everyone who decided to pick up this blade, whether intentionally or not, was subjected to the fate that you suffered. Except you were the one that it chose to keep. Yes, I am not surprised that you do not recall this event, as the shock of the entire incident would likely be blocked from your mind, even if the unholy blade had not been in complete control. I regret to inform you that after the sword dominated your mind, it proceeded to butcher nearly every soul in the village. It would seem that you made the quite formidable pairing, as the garrison of 50 Imperial soldiers proved unable to halt your rampage. From an interview I conducted, it seemed that you were cutting through them as if they were defenseless babes, gliding around their weapons, parrying aside halberds and swords, dodging arrows in mid-flight, and slicing them all down with clean, perfect cuts. Every twitch of your blade measured and calculated, like a war god tramping amongst mortals. I fear the creator of the cursed weapon desired to see if it could force you to commit the most heinous of acts, to ensure that your willpower was properly suppressed and would not conflict with accomplishing the mission he had in mind. Slaughtering me, of course. For after massacring the Emperor's troops, you proceeded to murder your own family, despite their efforts to plead with you for mercy or attempt to flee. Using a curious device that I acquired from Araby, I managed to witness this particular event myself, as I was able to watch their memories take place on an enchanted mirror. It was quite the sight. For while you seemed to murder anyone that you did not know normally, with an impassioned flick of your steel, cutting them down quickly, those that you loved, those that knew your name, who begged you to come to your senses, realize what you were doing, to remember who you were, who they were. They died slowly. You cut them bit by bit, skinning them alive. It was quite hard to watch, even for someone like me. All those poor men. The women and the children, too. I don't know how you did it. One would think that even with such a powerful force in their mind, they would be able to fight back. But I suppose we are only human after all. Despite all of our hopes and dreams, and everything we profess to believe about our individual wills, we are but puppets, little pawns in a game far bigger than we. By the end of that dreadful day, all that remained of your entire town were streets and homes littered with corpses, save for one sole survivor who witnessed the atrocity. The person whom I interviewed to patch together the truth, and I borrowed their memories so that I could observe it for myself. The horrible brutality of the event shocked the authorities so much that just to be safe, they had all the structures knocked over and burned everything down to ash. A wise decision, I think. The way all those poor people died, surely their souls would struggle to find rest. By the time I managed to backtrack your route to the village, while you were recovering, nothing remained except for scorched earth and many graves heavily blessed by the priests of Mor. That being said, there was so little left of those you had grown up around, I doubt that reanimating them would prove easy. After the Unholy Blade's test of its control over your body, it must have been satisfied, as you proceeded to walk without rest until reaching my doorstep, leaving quite the trail of carnage. Beastmen, greenskins, the odd innocent traveler. Quite the escapade you went on walking your way here, where you then proceeded to impale me. Thankfully, I had a contingency plan for such an occasion, and managed to drag both of us inside, before trapping the Unholy Blade in the Hall of Convergence. However, that is enough dour conversation. As I said earlier, there is a silver lining to this horrible tragedy. Since you have no home or family to return to, not to mention being a wanted fugitive by the Empire, and you passed your exam, I have decided to take you on as my apprentice. So rejoice, my dear student. Your true training as a lore seeker is about to begin. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the finale episode for week 2 of the Monstrous Arcanum series. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if so, please consider hitting that like button. It really helps out quite a bit. I have been really enjoying writing and recording this series for you guys, and can't wait to show off all the big beasties for week 3. I'd love to know your reaction to the storyline so far, and where you think it may end up going. I'd like to also take this time to thank my patrons for all their amazing support of my work, and of course give a big shout out to the King 7. Sign of the Emperor, Charles Bode, Jeffrey Raymer, Eric, CJ Ubusta, Wendell Short Eyes, and Higgins the Seagull. I deeply appreciate you all watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you can be aware when new content drops. Thanks for watching, guys.